Namaste everyone. Swagatam to Samvit Samvad. Today we are here to discuss about the Manipur issue with Raka Sudhakar Ji. Raka Sudhakar Ji became a Swayamsevak and RSS Pracharak in 1983, leaving his research work on plant physiology. He worked in northeast of India for 12 years in Assam, Meghalaya, Manipur, and Arunachal Pradesh. As a Pracharak, he traveled extensively in northeast. He worked among Bodo, Karbi, Amri Karbi, Lalung, Khasi, and other tribes. After returning as a Pracharak from Northeast, he worked as a journalist for 28 years. He currently runs a YouTube channel which has 2.13 lakh subscribers and 30 lakhs views every month. The channel name is Raka Lokam. I hope everyone is familiar with that channel. We have with us Ayush Ji, Balreddy Ji, Surinder Ji, Gautam Ji. Namaste everyone. So, Raka Ji, we just wanted to know what is the cause of the issue in Manipur?
Okay, before actually going to Manipur, we need to understand why the agitations or any movement, tribal movement in Northeast has such a longevity. It runs into, for the last 79 days, there has been violence in Manipur. There have been clashes between Kukis and the Manipuri Meithei people. So we first need to know why Northeast is different from rest of the country. The first difference is that of the terrain. The terrain is extensively hilly, mountainous, and then there are fast-flowing streams and essentially rural terrain. So what happens is, if the terrorist actually, or if any extremist organization is operating in a rural setting, finding out, cordoning off that area becomes extremely difficult. This is one reason why terrorism or extremism or militancy, whichever word that you prefer to use, has such a longevity in Northeast first. Secondly, the terrain is one. The second is each village is a self-sufficient village, which means it can sustain a battle or a movement or an agitation or even a clash for a long time. So that explains why Manipur has been on the boil for the last 79s, and there is no sign of let up in any near future. The third important point that we need to understand is Manipur is home to nearly 180, whole of Northeast is home to 180 tribes. And each tribe speaks its own language. For example, Naga, there are 14 types of Nagas: Ao, Sema, Angami, Lotha. Then you have Konyak, you have Ziliang, Liangmai, Rongmai. These are the different tribes. So you have Tangkhul Nagas. So what we know as Nagaland is actually a conglomeration of 14 Naga tribes, each speaking its own language, which is not understood by the people living next door, actually next village. This is one reason why differences flare up very quickly. For example, in Manipur, we have Nagas, particularly the Tangkhul Nagas in the the northern Manipur, Kukis on the southern, and the extreme tip you have Zomis, and then you also have Peites on the eastern side. These are all different tribes. And each tribe speaks its own language, which is unintelligible to the village next. The fourth important point that we need to understand is that every village across Northeast is a homogeneous village, which means that you find that in a village, if it is dominated by Kukis, only Kukis are present, no Nagas are present. If it is a Naga village, only Nagas will be there, Tangkhul Nagas, only Tangkhul Nagas will be there. And if it is a Meithei village, only Meiteis would be present, and there would be actually no mixing of the population, which is the reason why whenever there is a flare-up, it is actually one village attacking the other village. This is a very important thing that people outside Northeast should understand. It is actually a clash between two villages. So the images of the women being paraded naked, you would see that there are about 100 people, chasing and harassing those hapless women. And this is because one village, the Meithei village, has attacked a Kuki village. Most of the able-bodied men and women, they managed to flee. And this one family having about 2 males, about 2 or 3 females, was actually, it fell into the hands of the Meithei, and they killed the two people, and then they disrobed and then mass raped these two hapless girls. So it is actually one village against the other village. So that is the reason why the intensity of the conflict is always extremely severe. Unless we understand these five issues, people live together for hundreds of years, but they live as compartments, impervious compartments, without a vestibule in the compartmental train that we have. So this is one reason for misunderstandings to grow. I think even in case of Manipur, the turmoil that we are witnessing, the major reason is lack of communication channels between the Meiteis and the Kukis. The Kukis essentially live in the hilly regions of Manipur, and the Meithei basically form the dominant population in the central core region of the Manipur, which is about 22,000 square kilometers. So the central core comprises some 2,000 square kilometers, whereas the hilly region, which actually, it's on the fringes, actually, which forms the outer core of Manipur, is some 20,000 square kilometers. So there have been incidents of clashes and mistrust between the two communities almost since March this year. There has been tension. There have been tensions rising in this region, and there suddenly the trigger was the Supreme Court, the Guwahati High Court order, which said that there must be an opinion. There must be some kind of a consultation on the ST status to the Manipur. This is the trigger point, but the tensions have been running very high almost since March. So this is at the root cause of there is acute distrust between various populations. So what we see today is Kukis versus Meiteis, but in 1992 and till 1995, for almost 3 years, it was Nagas versus Kukis. It was a tribe versus tribe, Christianized tribe versus Christianized tribe. Nagas are essentially Christian, and Kukis are completely Christian. Both are Christian-dominated communities, and both are tribals, and both fought pitched battle, and army had to be called. And it ran for nearly 3 years. Same way in 2009, 9 to 11, there were clashes between Pangals, who are actually indigenous Muslim community, and the Meithei community. Pangals, in fact, you'd be interested to know the first chief minister of Assam was Muhammad Alimuddin, who is a Pangal. Pangal is actually Bengal, because the Muslims came from the Bengal region, so they are known as Pangals. So the first two terms was, the chief minister for the first two terms was Alimuddin. There were clashes between Pangals and Manipuris. So the Kukis have a long history of clashes with various communities. So these tensions have always been going on, and since March there were enough, enough indications that something big was going to flare up. And what we see today is actually has roots in the tribal, non-tribal politics, the Meithei and non-Meithei politics that have been going on for over 100 years.
Is the first friction happened after 1947 or before that? And what is the frequency of these clashes?
Oh, that's a very good question. Actually, till about 1920s, there was a lot of bonhomie between the tribals and non-tribals of Manipur. The king of Manipur used to annually invite the tribal chieftains to his royal court in Imphal, and he used to felicitate them. And when the king or his representative used to go to the tribal regions, they used to be very warmly received by the tribal communities, and there were intermarriages also. There were several cases of Naga women getting married into the Manipuri royal clan, and the Kuki women also getting married into the royal clan. So till about 1940s, there were no clashes practically between the Kukis and any tribe, Kuki, Zomi, Peite, Maring. Naga, Tangkhul, so on and so forth. There was no history of clashes between these two people. The problem today is basically because of two reasons. The first is the Meithei community, which actually forms about 60% of the community, 60% of the total population of around 24 to 30 lakhs, 60%, and it actually is majority of this population lives in the inner core of the Manipur Valley, Imphal Valley, which is just 2,000 square kilometers, whereas the 20,000 square kilometers of land is, essentially forested region, is highly mountainous region, but then tribals live there. In the northern parts, you have Nagas. In the southern part, you have Kukis. The lack of, living space is actually forcing the Manipuris to get into the tribal regions, into the hilly regions. And in several places, Manipuri colonies have sprung up, the Meithei colonies. Same way, because of the urbanization, a lot of tribals have come and have purchased land in the inner core, the Imphal Valley. So this has led to frictions. As I told you in the beginning itself, despite living together for hundreds of years, the meeting point, the intersection between the communities is very minimal, because of which, at the first available interface, there is bound to be some kind of clash. So, in fact, if you notice in the current, crisis that we are encountering, it is not actually a Hindu versus Christian war, as is being portrayed by a section of the missionaries and a section of the politicians. It is basically a clash between the Kukis and the Meiteis. Interestingly, the Naga tribes are not part of these clashes. The Naga tribes, who actually are in huge numbers in the northern part of the Manipur, they are not part of these clashes. There are no incidents of clashes, violence, attacks, even physical liquidation in any part of the northern Manipur, which is inhabited by the Naga tribes, mainly Tangkhul, Maring, so on and so forth. In the western part also, you have a very the Pete community, the Domi community. There is no history of clashes between them during the latest phase. The fight is only between the Kukis and the Nagas. So this needs to be understood. Not all the tribal communities are fighting a united battle. This is a fact that needs to be understood.
You just said it is between Kukis and Nagas, or is it Kukis and Meiteis?
Kukis and Meiteis.
Okay.
But there was a time during the 1990s when Kukis and Nagas fought.
Okay.
And that went on for 3 years. So there was one question in the chat box which said, then has the situation gone completely out of hand? Those who understand Northeast, its special terrain, its geographical peculiarities, and also the self-sufficiency of the homogeneous villages, they have a tendency to wage a long battle. So during the between 2010 to 2013, in the Assam Valley, there was a clash between, in the Brahmaputra Valley, that is, there was a clash between Bodos and the Adivasis, both tribals. So there was a clash and it went on for nearly 2 years. And for 2 years, 4 lakh people had to live in refugee camps. 150,000 Adivasis and about 150,000 Bodos and about 2.5 lakh Adivasis had to live in relief camps for almost 2 years. So this is this kind of long drawn battles are very common to Northeast, and those who live outside and are not exposed to Northeast, they feel that the situation has gone out of hand. Even as we speak today, there are no incidents in nearly 70% of Manipur. The violence is limited only to some 30% between in all places where Kukis and Meiteis meet. So the situation is almost 70% of the state is perfectly under control, and there is no history of any riot or any clashes or any fight between the communities in those parts of the state. So this needs to be understood, and this is only between these two groups, social ethnic groups. So I personally feel that it has not completely gone out of hand. There are several reasons why the government is unable to control it, which we can discuss later.
Rakaji, there is heard that there were earlier intermarriages between Kukis and Meiteis also.
Yes.
So when did it stop, or is it still in vogue? Number one. Number two, this scheduled tribe status till 1931 it was there. So what made the British remove the scheduled tribe status, and why was it not reinstated after independence?
Oh. Yeah, these two are at the root of the problem. The first thing about the intermarriages or the relations between the Kukis and the Meithei community. There have been intermarriages, and at least 7 to 10% of the Meithei community has been converted to Christianity, and they're known as Meithei Christians. So the Meithei Christians, most of them, they settled in the Kuki or Naga dominated areas, and there were intermarriages between Kukis as well as between Kukis and Meiteis, and between Nagas and Meiteis. But interestingly, when these clashes flared up, the Kukis have killed the Manipuris who were their son-in-laws. They killed them, despite the fact that they're Christians, despite the fact that they've been living in the Kuki-dominated areas. They were put to death. They were done to death just because they were of the Meithei origin. The same thing happened in the Meithei-dominated areas where Kuki women, have come as daughters-in-law or as wives, and they were also harassed. There are several incidents where they were physically attacked. So what we see today is, despite the intermarriages which still continue, despite the intermarriages, the chasm between the two communities, as we so to say, the differences between the two communities have not died down, despite some of the Meiteis becoming Christian. They are first Meiteis, then Christian. So this is one at the root of the problem. And you would be surprised to know, during the 1990s, when the Kukis and Nagas have fought for 3 years, the Kuki group was led by a Kuki pastor who recited from the Bible, saying that it is our sacred duty to kill the Nagas. And the Naga group was led by a Naga pastor who was, reciting from the same Bible, saying that killing the Kukis was our bounden duty. So it's essentially more than Christianity, more than religion. It's actually the ethnic differences that come into play. That is the answer to the first part. And the second part, as you said, is ST status. Manipuris have a very strong case for ST status. Not known to many people outside the Northeast is the fact that the Tripura royal clan, the Dev Burmans, are listed as STs. They are listed as STs. They are the royal clan, but they are listed as STs. The Bodos are listed as STs, but the Bodos had very expansive kingdoms, Sonwal Kachari kingdom, Dimasa kingdom, so on and so forth. The Dimasa tribes had their own kingdom, very, huge area was under their rule, and they have ST status. The Koch Rajvanshis, the name itself indicates that they are Rajavamshis. The Koch Rajvanshis, they are both in Bengal as well as the southern part of Assam, the western part of Assam rather. They have BC status in Assam, but ST status in West Bengal. Ahoms, who are actually who ruled Assam for nearly 600 years. They have OBC status. So there are several communities, tribal communities who had a royal lineage, who ruled over large tracts of land for centuries together, and they have all been listed as tribals. Manipuris perhaps are the only tribes, only ethnic group which have not been listed as tribals, though they have ruled Manipur for almost for nearly 17 to 1800 years. Manipur, interestingly, remained the same geographical unit for almost 17 to 1800 years. It was never partitioned. There were times when Burmese rulers invaded them.
Why did they remove?
Huh?
Why did the British remove them?
In 1931, the Manipuri community felt that they were upper caste and they did not want the tribal status. But later, it was the Kuki leaders who told the Manipuri leaders that ask for tribal status, otherwise you will lose out in the end. But the Manipuri leaders of that time, they felt that they belong to the upper strata of the society. Later, they realized that they were losing out because of the forest laws, according to which you cannot go and occupy the forested regions, the designated forest regions. So they started asking for the ST status, and it's a very legitimate demand because if you look at Mizoram, the whole population of Mizoram is tribal. The Mijos, the Zomis, the Maras, the Lakhers, everyone is a tribal. If you go to Nagaland, every Naga is a tribal without actually any exception, be it from Mon district, be it from Kohima, any part, even Dimapur. So in Arunachal Pradesh, everyone starting from Nishi to Apatani to Khamtis to all these Noctate tribes, they're all tribals. It is only in Manipur where in Meghalaya too, all the three major communities, the Khasis, Jaintias, and Garos, they have been listed as tribals. It is only the Meithei community which has not been registered as a tribal community. Manipuris themselves are to blame for in the 1930s because they felt that they were from the royal lineage, but later they have been demanding, and I personally feel that they have a very legitimate reason to ask for ST status. If all the population of Mizoram and all the population of Tripura can be tribal, why not in Manipur? So they have been approaching the courts demanding the ST status, and the court has asked the opinion of the state government on this issue. So this is the trigger point for the current clashes. Though it is not the actual reason, the tensions have been building up since March. You see there sudden manifestation somewhere in May. So that needs to be understood. In May, this court's verdict was a trigger point. But then the tensions were building up right from March.
Sudhakarji, is anywhere the infiltration or illegal migrants from Myanmar also causing these issues, or?
Yeah, that's an important question because the current tensions actually begin from March. In March, the state government had decided to undertake a house-to-house survey in the forest regions to identify migrants from Myanmar. There are two kinds of migrants from Myanmar. One is those who have fled the appalling conditions in Myanmar because of the military rule and the lack of basic amenities in life, and they have come as refugees. But there is another section, mainly Kukis, who have their relations across the border. So there are Kukis on this side, there are Kukis on that side of the border dividing line. So the Kukis came over to this region and their population has grown exponentially and quite abnormally. So the government decided to undertake a house-to-house survey to identify such people and send them into two different camps. One is a detention camp for the illegal intruders, mainly Kukis, and then into the rehabilitation centers for those who have come as refugees. There are a lot of communities like the Kachins, Karains, Domis, Mijos, and sometimes even Kukis and others who have genuinely, and they had genuine reasons to flee Myanmar. So the government, when it took up this house-to-house survey, the Kukis have strongly opposed. The second important thing is as we know, Manipur actually is at the threshold of the famed golden triangle of drug trade: Thailand, Laos, and then Myanmar. So the drug trade freely goes on in Tripura, in Manipur, parts of Nagaland, and even in Mizoram. In Tripura, in Mizoram, and even in Nagaland, the government is cracking down on the opium smugglers, the drug smugglers, and the drug trade, so on and so forth. So, in case of Manipur, when the government wanted to crack down on these, traders, illegal traders, then this flared up into an ethnic clash. So, drug trade at some stage, at some level, is one of the main reasons, and also the influx of cookies from across the border. The Manipur has about 250 to 300 kilometers long border with Myanmar, and the uniqueness of this border line is that for about 5 kilometers, an Indian can walk into across the border line and then walk into up to 5 kilometers without being asked for any papers. All he has to do is to just register his name. He can walk into Burma or Myanmar for nearly 5 kilometers. The same way the Burmese people can cross the line and go up to 5 kilometers. So after 5 kilometers, they would be asked papers, and once they enter their names, and if they don't return by evening, then the search starts. So for 5 kilometers, it is actually a kind of open border. So this is actually encouraging the influx of the people. Manipur, for example, one of the biggest business center in Manipur is Moreh. Moreh is actually the last village of Manipur. It is abutted by a Burmese village called Tamu. If you go to Moreh, you can simply walk across into Tamu village, buy things, and then come back. And people of Tamu, they can simply walk into Moreh, buy things, and then purchase things, and then go back. So this open and porous border is also at the root of the problem in some way. And this is something that people do not really understand outside, because our border our western borders are fenced completely, and we have an LOC which is a live wire as far as the security and protection is concerned, and then we have border with LAC with China, which is regularly patrolled, monitored, and then there are flag meetings and so on and so forth. Bangladesh, of course, fencing is now currently on. I think large part of the Bangladesh border has been fenced, and the influx as of now has come down a bit. But then there are about 6 or 7 border points where the Bangladeshi people can walk into India, purchase things, and go back. And the Indians also can go in and then come out. So it is the Burmese border is unique in that for 5 kilometers, no border regulations are exist practically. So there is a particular set of villages in the Nagaland where the nearest school is on across the border. The students of these 4 or 5 villages, they walk into Burma, attend the school, and come back in the evening. So this is the on several occasions, the people from Burma, they walk into India, purchase things, stay throughout the day, meet their relatives, and go back. So this open border is something that we need to understand, and because the same people live on both sides of the border, the government has been lenient because it did not want to divide the same people. So I think these things need to be appreciated, and in some way these have contributed to the influx. The government should have checked the influx almost last 20-30 years, and then things should have been actually set right. But then it was taken up only in 2020 3 February or March. So this is at the root cause of the whole problem.
Rakaji, if
Yes.
people is one aspect of it. There is another dimension which is made the current crisis what it has become with weapons. So we have civilians looting weapons from police stations. Then you have cookies probably receiving cartels from across the border. Then there is a police hand in glove with somebody. There are the Assam rifles that are also having some allegations in that the entire eastern Manipur Myanmar border and even the southern boundary of Manipur with Myanmar. So are these just narratives or are they real? What is the real situation as far as weapons is concerned? There is cookies claiming that the administration and Meithis are together. Meithis are alligating that the cookies, Assam rifles, and this infiltration. So, what exactly is this about weapons? How come weapons have become so many in the hands of civilians? And what the second question would be, in this scenario, how come the Armed Forces Special Protection Act just slipped away and then the current crisis and still no action on that bit? Can you tell us about weapons and AFSPA both?
Yeah, I think both are very interesting questions, and we need to understand these two dynamics if you really want to understand the problem across Northeast in general and in Manipur in particular. The first thing is the border is very porous, and for every border checkpost, there are hundreds of forest routes which are accessible to the people. People simply walk into Burma. When I worked in Assam, there is a place called Margarita. After Margarita, there is a road called Stilwell Road. This road was built during the Second World War by a British officer called Stilwell, and it passes from Margarita, say Digboy, in Assam, and it goes into the Burmese, territory for about 1,000 kilometers, then goes into Yunnan. So when you go there, you can actually walk across into the Burmese territory, stay there, take a couple of photographs, and then come back. So the border is so porous. This is at the root of the problem. The second major thing is most of these ethnic groups are martial groups. Though the Britishers did not consider them martial races, they're all martial races who were adept in hunting, attacking the rivals, and then carrying spears, bows, arrows, pickaxes, and also the Naga Dao is very famous. If you have ever worked with any Naga people, they always carry every Naga boy, starting from boy to the oldest, he carries a Naga Dao. The same way, every tribe carries his own, sword, very sharp-edged weapon. So he's prone to violence. This third big reason is Southeast Asia is a very big market for small arms. Most of these small arms actually find their way from China and they come into places like Thailand and others. That is the reason why most of these terrorist organizations, militant organizations, call them whatever you want to, starting from Ulfa in Assam to Bodo terror groups or the Tripuri, Manipuri, or so on and so forth. All these have some kind of office in Bangkok, Thailand. Because Thailand is the place where small arms are available. So they smuggle the small arms. The borders between these two countries are very porous. Because if you have ever been to Burma, you would see that the last 100 kilometers, the border that abuts India and Burma, it's actually not under the control of the Burmese army. The different tribes like Kachins, Karens, Kukis, Chins, and all these tribals live almost in a semi-autonomous manner. They have their own opium cultivation, their own terrorist groups, which are hand in glove with the terrorist groups or the extremist groups across the border in India. So getting guns, small arms, as well as sophisticated arms is not a difficult thing. Third thing is most Northeasterners are adept in making firearms. during my stay in Assam, I saw in the rural areas, there is a gun called Khaja Banduk. Khaja Banduk Khaja is actually, it's like a small pipe where you actually, um, fix some, explosive material and then
Fill gunpowder.
fill some explosive material and then use it.
Fill the gunpowder.
Yeah, gunpowder. 2 or 3 times the pipe will actually develop cracks, and then they discard it and they make another one. So making of this Khaja Banduk, actually, when I stayed in the 1990s, it was something like, 1,000 rupees or 1,500 rupees, you can get a Khaja Banduk. This is mainly used to scare away the elephants and rhinoceroses because it makes a huge sound. But if it is shot from a close range, there could be fatalities even among the human beings. So Khaja Banduks are very popular, and I have seen in several villages people making cartridges. People actually, sit at home, you converse with him, and he's actually, hitting at some kind of shell and then filling the gunpowder and then making cartridges. So this is almost like a small scale industry in several parts, starting from the Dinhata region in West Bengal. Since you have worked in Bagdogra, you also know Dinhata, which is actually on the border between Assam and Bengal. Dinhata market is known for fake illegal arms, and then arms can be smuggled either into Bihar or into Bengal or even into Assam. So getting a weapon in Northeast is not really difficult, even to this day. That is the reason why a small group of 10,000 people or 5,000 people, it procures about 15 or 20 tamancha kind of guns, and then 1 or 2 sophisticated guns. And if they can lay their hands on some police or armory, then they can lay on some sophisticated weapons, get trained across the border, and then they can operate. You must have seen the videos where the Kuki tribals were using AK-47, AK-47 like weapons. Actually, I cannot say for sure whether they were AK-47s, but from all appearances, it was looking like AK-47. This is one major problem across Northeast because of the porous nature of the border, the mountainous nature of the terrain. Getting weapons becomes very easy. This is one of the chief problems of Northeast. Small weapons are easily available, and as you said, Manipur has a population of close to 30 lakhs, but has about 54 terrorist groups. According to the South Asian Terror Portal, South Asian Terror Portal actually documents every terrorist activity in this country. It lists about 54 terrorist organizations, of which 24 are terrorist groups operating within the Meithei region. So this is another. Then about 30 some Naga groups, some Kuki groups, some Chin groups, some Domi groups. So any tribe which has about 4,000 or 5,000 population and can occupy a strategic vantage point on the national highway. There are only 2 national highways in Imphal which actually connect Imphal to the rest of the country. One passes through Jeribam, Kohima, then Guwahati. The other one passes through the Chudachandpur region and goes into the Silchar region. So any tribe can actually close down these routes and then prevent the movement of goods. They allow the people to pass through, but then they do not allow the रसद जिसको कहते हैं हिंदी में, वो रसद पहुंचने नहीं देते हैं. तो क्या होता है, there was a time in 1990s when there was a blockade for 2 years. People who are now criticizing Modi don't even realize that there were blockades for 2 years and material could not reach Manipur. And a gas cylinder in those days, in 90s, it costed close to 900 rupees when the actual cost was around 300 rupees. And the petrol sold at 300, 400 rupees because of the blockade. So any tribal community, any ethnic group can hold the whole state to ransom. This is, this is how the weapons actually make their way into, and going to China is also quite easy. And then going into Bangladesh is also quite easy. The terrorist groups from Mizoram, they used to operate from Bangladesh, particularly the Chattagang area, the Cox's Bazar area, which is the hotbed of the Rohingya separatism. So these people have some links with the Rohingyas. Of course, after Khalida Jia came, these things have come down significantly, but then still some groups operate across the border in Bangladesh, in these parts. So this small group small weapons is a major cause of concern across Northeast, more so in Manipur. And one more interesting thing I would like to tell you about why terrorism or why extremism or militancy survives for so long in Northeast is, firstly, they run parallel governments. They levy taxes from every businessman and government employee and government officials. In Nagaland, there is a governor's report which said that the chief secretary pays his hafta vasuli to the NSCN group. The chief secretary of the state used to pay. This is a report from the governor who sent, I think, B.T. Rajeshwar, if I am not wrong. B.T. Rajeshwar, who was head of the BSF at one point in time. He sent a report saying that even chief secretary pays his monthly, tax to the NSC, and they, issue such, receipts in the name of the government of Nagaland with the slogan Nagaland for Christ, and they simply take 1,000 rupees from you and give you a receipt for 1,000 rupees. So this is one reason why terrorism survives, and the second is very close-knit, links between the people and the terrorists. This is one more reason. In most of the Northeast, the terrorists, the word they use for Northeast, particularly when Alpha was very popular, the word they used to use was Amar Lora. Amar Lora means, Amar means Hamara, Lora means Bacha. So terrorists used to be referred as Hamare Bache. So this is that is the kind of support they used to enjoy. Of course, after Modi came, a lot of change has come, but then still a lot of suppose a police convoy or a military convoy enters into a village, the first one who sights the military convoy is simply a woman. She simply takes her thali and taps the glass on the thali. That is a signal for rest of the women to actually pick up their thalis and then start beating. This is a signal to the terrorists to run away. So the terrorists immediately run away. By the time the police actually manage to reach, if the police are still able to move fast, then women come and mob the police. And the Indian military, being Indian military, it does not fire on women or it does not fire on civilians. It has to reason with them and then find its way. And by that time, the terrorists run away. In the recent clashes also, there is one incident where 16 terrorists were apprehended by Indian military. The women mobbed the military camp, disrobed themselves and stood stark naked in front of the military personnel, and then said that, you cannot go. So the military had to, military commander there had to take a decision and leave, let go all these 16 or 17 terrorists, thinking that we can apprehend them. We can always have another day when we can apprehend them. So all the 16 had to be left, had to be released by the military. This is a very recent incident I'm talking about. As far as AFPSA is concerned, the problem is since there was a relative lull in terrorist activity and most of the terrorist groups were holding talks with the government saw that situation has improved a lot in Manipur, so it has lifted the Armed Forces Special Powers Act in about 17 police stations. So what happens is, Manipur being a very compact and small state, I can always commit a crime in a station where there is AFPSA and then simply run into a place where AFPSA doesn't work.
Rakaji, I want you to include one point in this answer of the AFSPA. In the backdrop of the tribal status being claimed by Meiteis, which is in court and coming to a closure almost at least at the level of the High Court. And then it was not anticipated that there will be Kukis who are going to oppose, because they've been opposing Meiteis not to become part of the tribal list. And that current trigger and the clash and the AFSPA, is this all miscalculated changes that have happened? Was it not for anyone in the forces would see that this case is going on, this whole thing about the Meiteis to be brought on the list and High Court and all that? I think I would not do more than one variable in such an area, but two things were happening here.
I think at some level the government thought that the situation was quite normal. Most of the terrorist groups or the extremist groups were holding talks with government, and as you can see, the Nagas have a ceasefire. Both the Khaplang group as well as the Isak Muiwa group have ceasefires with the government of India, and they are holding talks. So that is the reason why Nagas have not risen against the Meiteis. So the government expected that, on an experimental basis, first 9 police stations, AFPSA was Special Powers Act was removed, and then some 7 or 8 more police stations it was lifted. So in a state which has about 115 police stations, I think removing Special Powers Act was a calculated risk that the government took, and I think now the government must be regretting, but now it cannot even impose. The demand has to come from the public themselves, because you must be, as a person from security forces, you must be knowing that there have been a lot of fake accusations of human rights violations against our armed forces personnel in terror infested, militancy infested areas. So now the biggest problem for the army is it needs this nod from the local magistrate to actually shoot at people. So the local magistrate, being local and are sitting ducks for these terror groups, they're not even signing. So as a result, the army is there, but it is unable to discharge its duties the way we want it to do. So I personally feel AFPSA must be Special Powers Act, AFSPA must come back, and I do not really know the intricacies why the government is not bringing back this. Or I think it was a calculated risk that the government took, and it appears to me that it has a boomerang.
Now, the AFSPA can only contain the current situation, while I'm sure a lot more needs to be done on all fronts, political, harmony, all of that. I'm sure there are experts to talk about that.
Absolutely. I personally feel that in the absence of Special Powers Act, the army is the security forces are severely handicapped. They're extremely handicapped and they cannot take actions. See, that's one of the reasons why the army is ineffective. As of now, the army is patrolling the sensitive points, and then it is, guarding all those refugee camps where, Meiteis are living in the refugee camps in the Kuki-dominated areas, and Kukis are living in the, relief camps in the Meithei-dominated areas. The army is manning those areas, and beyond that, for army to be effective, I think Special Powers Act must be brought back, and the Manipuri Meithei community has relentlessly fought against this Special Powers Act. If you remember, there was this lady called Irom Sharmila who did not take solid food for 16 years and took only liquid food and protested against the Special Powers Act. So I think the Meithei community and the Kuki community must demand. There must be a demand from the public in the first place, because both the groups are accusing the military of not doing enough. For military to do enough, I think this Special Powers Act must come back, and that will actually give a guarantee to the security forces to function freely without fear of being persecuted or victimized at a later date by the fake human rights organization.
Rakaji, this public intervention that we are talking about. In the last, I think about 10 days, week to 10 days back, we had this Meithei women who burned down the house of the rape accused people, and they also staged a protest. So seemingly, it looks like the women are coming forward to support the atrocities perpetrated on the Kuki women. So do we see any reciprocation also from the Kuki side also, number one? And do you see any parallels to this, like when the Naxalite movement was here in Telangana? We also saw this, the women came forward to, in a way, to fight the Naxals also, but also to expose them. In terms of public support, do you see something happening here? Like you were saying that the public asked for the Armed Forces Special Protection Act, Special Forces Act. So
the society is so deeply divided on ethnic lines that men, women, children, elders, everyone is on one side. All cookies are on one side. It's such a deeply divided society as of now. It has always been there have been fault lines, and they have now developed into chasms, as I said earlier. So at this stage, I think it's not possible. The reaction by the Meithei women against this these perpetrators of the heinous crime is more, to me, it looks like is a more a damage control exercise. Frankly, this is my personal opinion. Because this is a huge setback. This parading naked, these two women, is a huge setback to the Manipuri, the Meithei demands and Meithei arguments. So they must have done this. But these things happened in villages. So several such incidents would have happened on both sides. On both sides. Because women are the easiest victims, most vulnerable sections in any conflict of this type. So my personal feeling is this incident of burning down the house and so on and so forth. There was a statement by Manipuri committee, civil society organization yesterday, which said that while we condemn this heinous act, the very unforgivable kind of act, the media persons who came did not cover the Meithei house. They had their own litany of complaints. So this is at this stage, finding a common ground becomes very difficult, because even according to the information that I have, even at the administrative level, there has been a deep divide. The cookie officers and the non-cookie officers, they are not seeing eye to eye at this stage. If the information that reached me is right, my personal feeling is at this stage, ex-servicemen services should be utilized. The ex-servicemen, they have served in the same Assam regiment, they have served together in the same companies and battalions, and they had a lot of camaraderie that transcended their tribal, ethnic, and religious divide. So these people must be brought together, must be made to sit together, and then these people listen to them, and some kind of reconciliation can be brought in. So that I feel, as of now, the only community that can be trusted is the ex-servicemen community, which still enjoys very strong bonds with their erstwhile comrades. Politicians, of course, they can come at a later stage. Politicians have sway over their communities, but in these communities, the politicians are guided by the tribal elders. In most of these tribals, it is most of these states, northeastern states, the village elders, Naga women, for example, Naga Hohod, Naga civil society organizations, they play a very strong role. So they are in fact influenced by these groups. So I think as of now, the ex-servicemen appear to be the only ray of hope. To me, it appears, and I think the governments must start talking to the ex-servicemen, bring them together, make them discuss, come out with ideas, and then start diffusing the situation, because finding a solution at this stage is not possible in a charged atmosphere that we have at present. So I think this is the only possible way out, it appears to me. And I think 10 of the BJP MLAs who come from the tribal region, they have also resigned. So under pressure from their ethnic leaders. So I think the ex-servicemen can be tapped into, and then the civil servants, ex-civil servants who served in these regions and have retired and have stayed in those regions, they must be, brought in, and I think that is an immediate way out. And army must be fully equipped so that it can actually deal with the unruly elements and then take strong action. I think these are the two immediate ways out that are available in Manipur, because the chief minister is a Meithei himself. So any step by him would be at this stage seen, viewed with suspicion. So that is the kind of division that we have. So I think these two groups should be tackled, and women, of course, are a very powerful bloc, but then even these women organizations are divided on ethnic lines. So becomes very difficult for one to operate in such a space.
Though I missed on the very, very important part of the whole discussion. Just one last question from my side is, Raka Sudhakar ji, you shared that this whole episode of these events started from March with a court verdict, but later on in the month of May, it took a different turn altogether. So what is your assessment? Why this happened actually? Were there no external influences which affected? Because it was basically a caste-based reservation which they were demanding, but all of a sudden arms came in and so much of atrocities being publicized and shown publicly.
See, it is actually the reservation issue is the last straw on the camel's back. Since March, the tensions were building over the house-to-house survey that was undertaken by the government to weed out the outside elements. So this was deeply resented by the Kuki people, and of course the government's efforts to rein in the opium cultivators and opium smugglers, drug smugglers, also annoyed some sections of the society. I do not say Kukis are involved in it, but then some sections were unhappy with it, and then this flared up, and it was waiting to explode, and this court order became the proverbial last straw. So the ethnic divide has always been there for at least last 20-30 years. There have been tensions between these various communities, and the struggle for living space is also a major issue. So all these issues combined, the issue flared up, and the court order is only a trigger point. Actually, much before this happened, Biren Singh's visit to Churachandpur district, which is a tribe Kuki dominated district, that was marred, and there was large scale hooliganism, damage to the meeting venue, and then the chief minister had to return without actually participating in the official program. That happened somewhere in March. I think there was time. I think somewhere along the administration may have failed to gauge the seriousness of the situation. But the court order is actually not the reason for this conflict. It is only a last trigger point for this flare-up. This needs to be understood clearly.
Sudhakarji, you have given a very nice explanation about the issue. Because you were present there, you know what the issues are, how locally people react. So what can be done now to bring awareness among the people here? And another question is, there are many Manipur students or Northeast students in these areas, in cities and metropolitan cities. So how can we build confidence among these students?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The problem here is in Hyderabad, the Kuki students, supported by various other tribal and missionary organizations, they held a separate rally on 29th of June, if I am not wrong. They organized a rally at Indira Park, which was attended by several Christian missionaries, and they tried to portray it as a Christian versus Hindu thing. And a day later, or a couple of days later, the Meithei students separately, they held a meeting. Now that by some civil society organization, that they protested and they tried to tell about their version of the the current imbroglio. The problem is the students from Manipur. For instance, all the Kuki students who come, they're under all the tribal students, particularly those who are converted. They actually operate with the help of church. So I think church is actually vitiating the atmosphere, and it is trying to actually portray this as a Hindu versus Christian struggle. So I think the government and the civil society in Manipur must first try to clear the air and say that this is not a Hindu-Muslim issue. Because there is a vested interest in portraying this as a Hindu-Muslim issue. And if it is portrayed as a Hindu-Muslim issues, the Christians the church, basically, I am not blaming Christians, I am blaming the church setup, which is actually a handmaiden of the Western imperialist powers, and they'll come out with minority atrocity reports, and then they go to the congressional hearings, and they try to paint a very bad picture of India. I think this needs to be dispelled, and all conscientious citizens must clearly tell that this is not a Christian versus Hindu struggle. It is actually a inter-ethnic rivalry. This is first thing that needs to be portrayed, and second thing, the students, sitting across in places like Vijayawada. When I was working in Vijayawada, there were over 400 students in Loyola College studying from Manipur. Half of them were from the tribal areas, and half of them were from the Meithei areas. And then there were, I visited a place called Nutaki in Vijayawada. There are about 200, 250 Manipuri boys, Meithei boys studying in a school run by our friends. In Vizag also, we have same way. And in Manipur, in Central University and IFLU also, you have sizable number of people. I think you can start holding discussions with them and try to find out a common ground. Listen to the grievances of both the groups, and then try to, these people can actually act as influencers, because they live in a third party area, neither Kuki area nor the Manipuri area. These people should be, can be used as tools, because they live together. Ultimately, they study in the same college, they study in the same institution. I think we can start conversations with these people. In Hyderabad also, they have held demonstrations separately. I think these Kuki boys and all must be brought out of the influence of the missionaries. I'm again re-emphasizing, not Christians, but missionaries. This is not Hindu-Muslim. I think this message must go from cities like Hyderabad, Pune, Bangalore, Chennai, Delhi. Delhi has a sizable population of Kukis as well as the Meithei, even Nagas, and so on and so forth. And several civil rights organizations live there in Delhi. So I think these organizations also must organize hold some kind of reconciliation meetings, and a message can go from these places to Manipur so that they can live together. I think this can also be a very important meeting ground. So these students, I think people like us who are nationalistic in outlook, and then who are concerned about the things in Manipur, we should open a dialogue with these students from across Manipur who are working here. So I think we can start a dialogue with them. For instance, there was I think a Naga officer in one of the very famous laboratories in Hyderabad, and he was the grandson of a great Naga leader called Bob Khati. Bab Khating was the one who trekked all the way from Manipur up to Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh and integrated the people of Tawang into the mainstream of the country. Though Tawang was part of this country on the map, there was no emotional connect. It was a Manipuri tribal, perhaps a Kuki, if I am not wrong, Kuki or Naga. Bab Khating trekked all the way to Tawang, then went and then he brought these people closer to the rest of the country. And in 1962 war, these people became the bulwark of support for the Indian Army. So I think such saner elements and leaders are present everywhere in these communities. And we need to start looking for these people and then try to bring the communities together.
As we had Jammu and Kashmir study groups which helped in understanding the Jammu and Kashmir issues, are we having or can we have any such groups related to Manipur, or maybe in general for Northeast study groups? Can that help resolving such issues in future?
Yeah, that's a very good idea, because the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh has already started an outreach for the students of Northeast who are studying in various places outside Northeast. So a research organization has been set up to look for the common ground between various ethnic groups, and also a mass contact among the students of various ethnic groups from different states of Northeast, different regions of Northeast is already on, and then a massive student outreach is being planned across the country. It's already it's a job in progress actually. So my personally, Northeastern people come to Hyderabad, Telangana particularly for one, for medical reasons. That's a short stay. They come here, get treated, go back. I think that's one area where we can actually provide support to their efforts to go to the right hospital. Usually they come with a recommendation to a particular hospital, but we can work out logistics for them and then organize vehicles for them, and then these things can be done to build a bridge between Northeast and others. One. Second population is those who are working students. They stay here for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and then go back to their places. So our student organizations must establish contact with these people. And then the third section is those who are working as security guards. Unbeknown to most of us, 99% of the security guards who are present at the industrial units, banks, ATMs, corporate offices are from Northeast. They study up to class 10. They come here, they work for 12 hours a day, earn 12,000 a month, and 10 or 15 boys together, they stay in a small single room tenement, and then they share their work. And then so this community also should be kept in touch, because rumors majorly float among this semi-literate community. So I think this is one community that we should look for and start working for. If you remember, during 2012 or 13, there were attacks on the Assamese people in various parts of the country, and most of these Northeasterners have fled and they've gone back to their places. So in those days, there were not many organizations that helped. I think we can start one such initiative for these people. I think these are some biggest problem is Northeasterners are mistaken as Chinese. One word that they detest most is Chinkies. Even educated people working in software, when they look at a person from Northeast with Mongoloid features, they simply say, "Are Chinkies." They are opposed to China, but we call them Chinese. So this is, I think, we need to be sensitized, and we need to build some kind of bridges with the Northeastern populations, various kinds of populations that we have, different categories. And this will basically help in building some kind of bondage between these communities. For instance, there was a Naga boy from Mon district who was studying in Iflu. So during COVID, he went back, and since I knew him, I called him up, and he was so happy that someone from Hyderabad had actually called him while he was in Mon under the lockdown. So he was so happy, and when he came back, he tried to meet me, and then we established a very close contact. I think this is something that people in the rest of the country can do, and this can actually build bridges between rest of the country and Northeasterners in the first place, and between the communities, ethnic groups in the Northeast to some extent. Of course, I do not say that this is a panacea kind of thing. This is not a Zinda Talisman kind of a solution, but then it can help in its own way.
Dhanyawad Raka Sudhakar ji for your patience to answer our questions, and also it was very not just informative, but you have also given us the solutions of how to solve it. Some of them are like short term, like AFSPA, the military groups, and as you said, the ex-servicemen things, which will help for solving these problems for now, and the long-term solutions which we have given, that we need to be connected to Northeast people. Dhanyawad Raka Sudhakar ji for your precious time.